My name is Sarah Whitmore, and I'm from Denver, Colorado. When I was younger, I thought I understood everything about my father. He was a quiet man, a respected architect who rarely showed emotions and always kept a tight schedule. My friends used to joke that he smiled only twice a year, once on his birthday and once when the Broncos won the Super Bowl. But there was something he did during my 17th year that changed everything I thought I knew about him. It was the summer of 2013 when my world felt like it was spinning out of control, and my father, of all people, bought an entire train compartment for just the two of us. At the time, my mother had just moved out. My parents didn't fight like most do. Instead, there was silence. Cold, lingering silence that crept through every corner of our home. One morning, I woke up to find a note from Mom on the kitchen counter, along with a single suitcase missing from the hallway. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. But it shattered me all the same. Dad didn't say much after that. For weeks, the house remained dead quiet except for the hum of the coffee maker and the occasional sound of cutlery at dinner. I remember trying to study in my room one night, barely focusing, when I heard a knock at my door. "Sarah," he said quietly, "I've got something planned for us." He didn't give details, just told me to pack a small bag and bring a book or two. The next morning, we were in a cab headed to Union Station. I still didn't know what we were doing until we stood on the platform, staring at a majestic old-fashioned train. He handed me a paper ticket. "We're going on a little trip," he said with a tired smile. I glanced at the ticket. First class. Sleeper compartment. Then I noticed something unusual. The ticket had both our names, and the attendant smiled warmly as if he already knew us. We boarded the train, and instead of sharing a cabin with others, we were led to a spacious private compartment. Wood-paneled walls, plush velvet seating, 2 beds, and a large window that stretched nearly the entire length of the wall. "I bought the whole compartment," Dad said quietly, almost awkwardly. "Figured we could use a little privacy." It was then I realized, this wasn't just a trip. It was something more. A gesture. A signal. Maybe even an apology for all the silence. I didn't know how to react. I just nodded and looked out the window as the train began to roll forward. The journey took us from Denver through the Rockies and beyond, winding through breathtaking landscapes. At first, we didn't talk much. I buried my head in a mystery novel while he sipped coffee and read an old architecture magazine. But as the train picked up speed and the world outside blurred into forests and rivers, the silence between us began to crack. On the second night, after dinner in the dining car, he told me something I hadn't expected to hear. "Your mother and we didn't know how to tell you. It wasn't your fault." I sat there, stunned. My fork paused mid-air. He wasn't looking at me. He was staring at his plate, the way he always did when he talked about things that mattered. "I know I've been distant. I've always thought, if I just worked hard enough, kept things stable, everything else would fall into place. But that's not how people work. That's not how families work." I didn't know what to say. So I stayed quiet and just listened. For the first time in months, he kept talking, not about blueprints or deadlines, but about feelings. About regrets. About how he wished he had done more to hold things together. And then he said, "I don't know what the future holds, Sarah. But I wanted this trip to be something good. Something just for us." Something about that moment broke open a dam in me. The pain I'd been holding in, the questions I was too afraid to ask, it all came pouring out. Why did Mom leave? Was he angry? Did he miss her? Was he scared? He answered every one of my questions, honestly and without brushing anything aside. He didn't defend her, and he didn't blame her either. He just told the truth, as gently as he could. After that, everything changed. Over the next few days, we fell into a rhythm. Mornings started with breakfast delivered to our compartment. Fresh fruit, coffee, and warm pastries. Afternoons were for sightseeing and talking about everything from school to childhood memories. I learned more about my father in those few days than I had in the past 17 years. He told me about his dreams when he was young, how he wanted to be a musician before architecture stole his heart. He showed me sketches from an old leather notebook he carried in his bag. They weren't blueprints, they were portraits. Of people. Of Mom. Of me. I saw a side of him I never knew existed. One evening, as the train passed through a field bathed in golden light, he turned to me and said, "You know, I almost didn't do this. I almost cancelled the whole trip. But something told me, if I didn't do it now, I'd regret it forever." I smiled at him and whispered, "Thank you for not cancelling." It was the first time in weeks I felt like I had my dad back. Not the silent man who buried himself in his work, but the one who used to carry me on his shoulders through the farmer's market and let me fall asleep in his lap during movie nights. The train ride lasted 5 days. We passed through mountain towns, sleepy stations, and long stretches of wild country. We met people in the dining car, an elderly couple celebrating their anniversary, a group of college kids backpacking across states, and a conductor who told us ghost stories late at night. But always, we returned to our quiet little compartment. Our sanctuary. On the final night, I found a small wrapped box on my bed. Inside was a silver compass with an inscription that read, "Wherever you go, you'll never be alone." I looked at my father, confused. He cleared his throat. "It was your grandfather's. He gave it to me when I left for college. Thought you should have it now." My chest tightened. I didn't know what to say. So I just threw my arms around him and held on tightly. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared out the window at the stars, listening to the rhythmic clatter of the tracks beneath us. I thought about how fragile things were. How quickly people could drift apart. But also how, sometimes, it only takes one step, a single decision, to bring them back together. When we returned home, nothing magical happened. My mom didn't suddenly come back. My grades didn't skyrocket. But the air in our house felt different. Warmer. Lighter. Dad started making dinner more often. We watched movies together again. He even came to one of my school plays and brought flowers. I still keep that compass in my drawer. I don't use it to find directions, but sometimes, when I feel lost inside, I hold it for a moment. It reminds me of that train ride. Of the gentle click-clack of the tracks. Of my father's voice breaking through years of silence. Of a compartment bought not for luxury, but for love. Some people say money can't buy happiness. Maybe that's true. But that summer, my father bought a whole train compartment. And in doing so, he bought us time, space, and a chance to begin again.